The Eugene Municipal Code's restrictions on amplified political speech, when applied to public forums such as streets, sidewalks, and parks, do not merely regulate noise, they affect a usurpation of the individual's natural right to speak, to dissent, and to render one's voice audible in the open air, a right that precedes all municipal codes and that civil government was instituted to protect, not to muffle. The very act of using a megaphone or loudspeaker to criticize policy, denounce injustice, or summon others to protest is not a wrong in itself, nor does it, by its mere existence, inflict demonstrable injury upon persons or property. Yet the code, under the guise of noise control, transforms this lawful exercise of political speech into a punishable offense, thereby converting the government's duty to safeguard liberty into a license to silence it. Such a regime cannot be reconciled with the Lockean principle that the ends of civil government are the preservation of life, liberty, and a state, for when the state criminalizes the form of speech, its volume, its medium, its reach, while leaving intact the underlying right, it reveals that it protects its own repose more than it protects the people's right to be heard. This usurpation is rationalized by modern jurisprudence that allows the government to impose time, place, and manner restrictions on speech, provided they are content-neutral and narrowly tailored to a significant governmental interest. Yet in practice, that doctrine has become a constitutional fig leaf under which municipalities may criminalize the very means by which political speech becomes effective, as long as the restriction is framed as general rather than explicitly targeted. The Supreme Court's accommodation of such regulations assumes that the state may constitutionally regulate how, when, and where speech occurs, without thereby violating the First Amendment. But in doing so it licenses precisely the kind of general tyranny that the founders warned against. A regime in which the people's rights are not extinguished by explicit, content-based bans, but eroded by seemingly neutral rules that nonetheless render those rights functionally void. General tyranny, in the form of a blanket amplification ban or a volume-based citation scheme applicable to all political speech, is no improvement over specifically targeted tyranny, for a usurpation of rights is not rendered less wrongful because it wears the mask of neutrality. When the government prohibits or severely burdens amplified political speech under a general noise ordinance, it does not merely regulate conduct, it suppresses the necessary means by which the people confront power, assemble, and remonstrate. In this light, the Eugene Municipal Code's treatment of amplified political speech is not a legitimate exercise of civil authority, but a modern-day echo of the very abuses that Patrick Henry, Thomas Jefferson, John Adams, and John Jay denounced when rulers claimed a right to regulate the people's voice under the pretext of public order. The absolute right to speak, to dissent, and to amplify one's voice in political discourse is not wrong, and any law that converts peaceful, non-injurious amplification into a punishable offense commits a usurpation against that right, regardless of whether the statute is framed as content-neutral or generally applicable. For the people's right to be heard is not contingent upon the government's convenience, nor may it be forfeited simply because the authorities prefer a quieter, more pliable populace. The status quo, so constituted, must be protested not as a mere policy dispute, but as a constitutional and moral wrong, a general, content-neutral amplification ban that operates as a prior restraint on political speech, a regime in which the very act of amplifying dissent becomes a punishable offense, and a municipal code that, under the tutelage of time, place, and manner, jurisprudence, presumes that the government may regulate the form of speech where it dare not openly regulate the content, thereby effecting, in substance, the same kind of tyranny that the founders sought to prevent.